All right. So today we're gonna. This is really straight. So it's gonna be a straightforward chapter today. We're gonna have chapter. We're gonna basically review chapter 14. This is the lecture for chapter 14, aggregate planning, scheduling, and capacity management in healthcare operations management. This is the subject for today. There are a few learning objectives that we're gonna have. We're gonna first of all study and understand the basics of aggregate versus central planning. So what is aggregate planning and versus central planning, and capacity planning? That's the first thing we're going to study. Then we're going to have the understanding of the role of enterprise resource planning (ERP) system, and also we have MRP, which is material resource planning. Most likely, when you go to a job, especially in healthcare, you're going to have a lot of work to do with ERP. So basically, especially, we had this project actually, some great work in our projects they have done regarding like the scheduling systems, which is part of the ERP system. So imagine that you are in an organization, especially in healthcare, and the idea is that everything from hiring people, from production, from scheduling of the patient, from inventory of material for the healthcare related material, or basically all these healthcare scheduling of staff and nurses, scheduling of nurse operational room, lab results, and follow-up. Everything is designed in one central system. If it's just designed in one central system without the accounting and finance, it's called MRP. If the accounting and finance, the financial part, is also integrated, it's called ERP, the entire enterprise planning, resource planning. You had this topic actually in your PALM 345. But we're going to basically touch base a little bit today, and we're going to solve a comprehensive problem on Wednesday in class, and the record would be also available online. But coming to class is mandatory, as you could say. I just read your names. We're going to basically understand the importance of scheduling and capacity management within healthcare. Capacity management is a huge deal. Every aspect of operations, how good operations management work, how good the system is performing related to how good you design the capacity to begin with. So capacity management is what we're going to basically study comprehensively today. Understanding the dispatching rule, and also the basics of facility location analysis, including the center of gravity method. So these are the topics to study for aggregate planning. What is the definition of aggregate planning? Like in your daily life, we do aggregate planning in our daily life. We know how many, for example, this group right here, they were talking about a due date. They have a course for tomorrow. Perhaps a few people, they have due dates, right? So depending on how many courses you take, you find out how many days you come to human start with, and what days, how much work you should put on courses this semester, right? So basically, you make your weekly plans according to how many courses you have, what type of job you have, and what of personal life you're going to have. All these aspects, your job, your school, and your personal life, all together, you just find out your weekly activities for this semester, and you plan accordingly. Am I right? Okay. So that's called aggregate planning. Aggregate planning is that once you are here and you are talking and thinking about human start with, it's not the only thing in your plate. You have to think aggregate way and consider other duties you have, and then make plans accordingly. That's called aggregate planning. Same thing for an organization, is the planning needed to determine what needs to be accomplished while control ensures that the planned results are attained and resources used are properly accounted for. Your resources were your time, your accomplishments are your, for example, grade here, or how much money you make and how much happiness you have, and also the plan result attained, what are the plans you have in different aspects of your life. So this is called aggregate planning. An organization, given the resources, all the tasks, and all the plan, whether they are accomplished or not, is called the steps are needed to determine what needs to be accomplished, while control ensures that planning results are attained and resources used properly. So basically, this is aggregate planning. It's a very much integration of capacity management, inventory control, and scheduling. So at the beginning, you decide about the entire organization capacity. Then you have scheduling for resources, for raw material, and for staff. And then you have financing and accounting at the end working for you. So this is like organizational wide. So this is organizational wide, basically planning and control and strategic planning. So this is aggregate planning hierarchy in a healthcare organization. All right. At the end, you have the basically resources used and also patient flow control. So these are basically the bottom down over here. So the patient control stays over here. And then once you come up a little bit, what determines the patient flow and the resources used is the patient group planning and control, how to group patients, how to control them. And then one step up is the healthcare organization performance and also resource acquisition. So the resource acquisition is how to basically develop the resources and also employ the resources, and also the healthcare organization performance. These two determine the patient group planning and control. And at the top we have patient planning and also control and strategic planning, and also resource planning and control. So basically, what stays on the top of a healthcare organization is the entire strategic planning. So depending on, for example, whether you are a regional healthcare provider or a very sophisticated hospital, so this is like you have a strategic planning, which basically links one-to-one to resource planning and control. How to plan your resources and how to control them. And that basically steps down of how you basically do resource acquisition and how you manage basically the entire organization. And it goes all the way to resource uses and patient control. So in this level, you have whether there is urban or rural care, surgery, or for example, and also in the second stage, it comes to performance metrics such as mandated care level or MADCAT. Like these are different measures that you're gonna have for your organization. You have kind of a patient mix, seasonal healthcare or something. These are the level of patient group planning, and also capacity control equipment, and also depending on a specialist or occupational therapy. These are the lower level decisions you're going to have. So basically, what you can see, the aggregate planning of a healthcare organization is the same level of strategic planning. So these two are made in this kind of same level of strategic planning for patient services and also resource supply chain. So basically, what matters in terms of healthcare organization, you have some sort of strategic plans about the patients and also resources. So a healthcare organization is nothing but managing patients and managing the resources. And at some point, they basically gonna integrate. So in terms of the patient planning, you have the strategic and patient planning and control and strategic planning. And in terms of your resource planning and control, you have to basically assign your resources. So basically, you have to see what you have and what is the concentration. So these two levels, how you strategically view a patient and how you strategically view your resources determines the entire organization planning and control and strategic planning. So what basically we take from this slide is that resource planning is as important as a strategic planning, and it determines the entire organization, whether it's a hospital or any other healthcare sector. Entire organization plans in the long term. Say it again. Okay. So resource planning and control, organization performance, and resource acquisition is one aspect in resource planning and control. So basically, there are different factors impacting the resource planning. One of them is organizational performance. What is the level of performance of your organization? How accurate the measures are, and how good the organization perform is part of your organizational planning. Patients group planning and control is another aspect. Patient flow control and use of resources, how the patient flow into the hospital, which resources they use, and how much resources needed for each patient. Enterprise resource planning systems. So basically, this is a system. This is an integrated system for the entire hospital. So basically, there is something called My Chart in South Coast Massachusetts Hospital, which basically is what we see from a hospital, correct? But that is part of an entire ERP system, which basically manages the entire hospital. Patient care versus assembly line. So basically, we have to see that in healthcare, it's not the assembly line. Previously, we had ERP system for assembly line. We want to produce a table. It needs leg, it needs top, it needs painting, it needs finishing, and all that, packaging. But in a hospital, resource planning is different. Resource planning has a patient care into it, which has a lot of randomness actually involved. So basically, the parameters are not as accurate and certain as assembly line. So that's basically what you have to take into account. Labor is a driver in healthcare, and variability in healthcare processes is huge. So basically, that's the major differences with basically other organizations. So scheduling and capacity management, this is what we're going to study on Wednesday. This is the problem that we're going to solve, so let's just keep on that. We're going to, once we solve entire problem in Excel, we're going to talk about capacity management. So that's going to be taken care of. Here is figure 14, chapter 14, figure 2, which is scheduling framework for a healthcare organization. So this is basically the level of planning and scheduling you're going to have. The lower level scheduling is the daily allocation. So basically, we have daily allocation, we have operational scheduling, and we have building and planning. So of course, building and planning is a long-term decision you have. This is a medium term, and this is a lower term, or basically short-term decisions. There are some tactical scheduling analysis. So basically, in terms of tactical scheduling analysis, the time frame is ad hoc, depending. So the point is in healthcare. So you might think about what makes healthcare different. That's basically about the time. That what makes healthcare different than a regular organization. Which basically, I would like also next to you to put into your project. So that's basically part of the project we're going to do. So the time frame in ERP, is mainly ad hoc, depending on how the patient performs. We're going to have different timing for different patients, for different surgery. Whereas when you are producing this table, this is not ad hoc. It's mainly certain. You know how long it's going to take to receive an order you put for the legs of this table. The purpose is to basically analyze special needs. So basically, the tactical scheduling, when you are thinking about tactical scheduling in healthcare, is that you have a special needs. A doctor should come and say, okay, this patient is a special or not, and depending on that, how much time is needed. And the outcome is the increased awareness of overall scheduling needs. So basically, this is the tactical scheduling problem when you think tactical. And then in different levels, in the long term, on a kind of a macro level, you have the building and planning and the budgeting. Budgeting and planning. So basically, finance cost comes to the top. I just read this wrong. So budgeting and planning is something that is a macro level, and also an organization is basically taking the direction depending on how much budget they have. Right? So if you are a small hospital or a small healthcare organization, you're gonna plan differently or compared to a major specialist hospital in Boston, right? So the time frame for budgeting and planning is usually annual or as needed. The purpose is find out the capacity, basically those buildings and also resources you're gonna have, and the outcome is scheduling processes. So basically, the scheduling policies is the outcome of the budget. So we say that we are a regional healthcare sector, and basically the policies of the scheduling is as such. And then it comes as an outcome, gives budget, staffing, plans, and policies to the operational scheduling. And operational scheduling is a lower level framework, which basically is 2 to 6 months, the time frame. And also the purpose is the target specific workforce levels. For example, if you are a specialist hospital, you would say, I need specialists, postdocs, doctors, and all to target. And if you are a regional healthcare provider, so for example, nurse practitioner, so the purpose of this level is to focus on nurse practitioner or so. And also the outcome is to create employee schedule for care staff. So basically, the planning in a 6 month, what type of employees you need. And in an operational level, in a daily allocation, the time frame is ongoing. It's daily or ongoing. The purpose is to react to staffing variations. So people like leave the healthcare sector or just join or all those things. And the outcome is to determine the floating staff, overtime, and contact staff for the organization. So basically, this is the workforce scheduling for healthcare organization. As I say, you need to know that there are major differences of healthcare sectors compared to manufacturing or other operational level sectors. So basically, one big step in your project would be to find out what are the different. For example, if you are introducing a device that basically take into account the queue into your healthcare sector, you want to know what is the difference between that and also a healthcare and also a regular production planning and also operational planning. So basically, this is the workforce scheduling. Tactical versus operational scheduling is basically something we studied. Difficulties within the healthcare scheduling framework. So there are many difficulties because of the variations. Approaches to solving scheduling problems are a bit different. And healthcare operations and supply chain management in action. Scheduling an emergency department using Excel is what basically is, you may gonna do that sometimes when you get hired in a hospital. Question number one, how do we do a scheduling problem in Excel for emergency department? So this is the outcome of what you take home from this chapter. For example, scheduling an emergency department using Excel. Okay? There are some basic classes of healthcare scheduling problems. What type of healthcare scheduling problems do we face? There are different issues, like in scheduling, days off. So how basically nurses and doctors, they take days off, and also how long in advance they need to let you know, because you might have like different requests from hospitals or from nurses or from doctors that they take the days off, and also shift scheduling, what type of shift they want to have, and tour scheduling for specific tour they have. So these are the different scheduling problems that in healthcare hospitals you're going to face. Dispatching rules refer to the order in which certain jobs will be completed. So basically, this is the dispatching rule. What is the order in which certain jobs will be completed? So to finish a certain job, you need to do different tasks in order to basically complete the job, and this is called dispatching rule. And for dispatching rule, there are different job sequences. So you might have first come, first serve, shortest processing time, earliest due date, and longest processing time. These are different rules for job scheduling. So dispatching rule says that depending on type of the job, for example, we can say you have in an emergency room, right? You have 5 patients, right? Which one do you taking care of? Is it the one that first come, first serve? Do we have to do in ERs first come, first serve, or not? If it's not, then should we go to the shortest processing time? Those patients that require a little work, let's just finish them and let them go. Or let us work on the longest processing time. Or the earliest due date. For example, the earliest due date is most likely the one that we're going to take care of, because those patients that are critical, right? Does it make sense to you? So if you have 4 patients, one of them is critical condition. Don't you want to taking care of him first? So basically, most likely we're going to have a combination, or basically the earliest due date. So if you are working in your project, you might going to think about this job sequencing and say that in a healthcare organization, the job sequencing is usually different than a manufacturing or a production line. And that is because of the nature of healthcare, because it basically involves with people's health, and it's a very critical issue. Okay? There's a rule, it's called Johnson's rule, which are 5 steps over using which scheduling of a healthcare sector is going to be performed. Basically for scheduling, so basically once you want to do the scheduling in Excel, you need to use these 5 steps as Johnson's rule. First of all, list the time required for each job or patient here to complete each process. So basically we want to say once a nurse comes and then evaluate a patient, they want to write down the time required. This is a bandage needed, like 10 minutes, or is it the heart attack requires like for 10 hours, or whatever, right? Set up a one-dimensional horizontal matrix to represent the desired resources with the number of slots equal to the number of job or patients. So basically find out different slots that, okay, for a patient with broken hand, we need to take X-ray, we need to use, an orthopedic doctor, we need to fix the bone, and we need to do this and that, and each column represents the number of time and number of hours, amount of time needed to do that process. So basically, this is step number 1. Find out the time required and different steps of each patient task in order to release him from the hospital. Select the smallest overall completion time. So basically, this is based on earliest processing time. You select the smallest overall patient time. If that time is for the first process, put the patient as near to the beginning of the sequence as possible. All right. So there are different processes. Find out which patient requires the shortest completion time. So for example, if you have 3 patients, heart attack, broken hand, and a small bandage. The small bandage is perhaps the shortest in processing time. It says that if that time is for the first process, okay, if the first process means that there are different processes of the patient, if the first process is for that patient, put that patient up front. And if the smallest time occurs in the second process, put the job patient as near to the end of the sequence as possible. So basically there are 2 types of basic processes, if it's for the earliest process or for the latest process. Remove that job from the queue and repeat step 2 to 4 until all slots on the matrix are filled and all patients are sequenced. So basically, this is a sequencing problem. What it does, it just breaks each patient's processing time into different processes. And it says that if a patient requires more time up front, put him up front. If a patient requires more time in the second process, put him down there. And we're going to solve a problem on Wednesday on this issue so that you can completely understand the Johnson's rule. So more on Johnson's rule on our problem on Wednesday. So we're going to solve a comprehensive problem on Wednesday here in Excel, and you're going to be here and listen to that, please. Okay? So service facility location analysis. The main objective for service facility location analysis is either the maximization of revenue or maximization of service level. So we have to see for the service facility location, what kind of objective do we have? We either do maximizing revenue, you either care about money or about service level. There are 2 issues. There are 2 ways to do the objective for service facility location. And depending on that, we're going to have different scheduling. Center of gravity method is the center of gravity method is used to minimize cost and is often used to locate healthcare facilities. So basically, the location of healthcare facilities, the center of gravity method is used to minimize the total cost, is a way to minimize total cost, and is often used to locate healthcare facilities. So how can we locate healthcare facilities where we only care about the total cost? In the case of rural medical facility, the objective could be to minimize the combination of volume and the distance between different small communities that seek healthcare related services. So basically, how to locate an emergency kind of location for different rural areas. So basically, this also to minimize the cost. So let's say that there are 4 villages, right, with different densities, and the question is that we want to locate the healthcare center somewhere in between so that all the communities benefit while we are minimizing the total costs. Okay? So that's basically the center of gravity method. We have studied just the concept of aggregate and scenario planning, capacity planning, center of gravity method, dispatching rule, ERP, Johnson's rule, location analysis, and scheduling. And we're going to have a big problem in Excel to solve on Wednesday. All right? So